Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Mining Industry in the Pacific Alliance, Opportunities and Challenges in 2021. I would like to thank you all for joining us today, to Marco Zavala and Guerrero Olivos for organizing the event, to our speakers and to our audience. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sarah Armstrong Montoya, and I'm the General Counsel of High Power Exploration Inc., an exploration company using our own technology to advance mineral discovery. HPX has in the past directly had projects in Chile and Peru, and today through its subsidiaries Cordoba Minerals and Kaizen Discovery, both listed on the Venture Exchange in Toronto, has projects in Colombia and Peru, and we are constantly looking for investment opportunities globally with a keen interest in Latin America. Thank you again to all our panelists today, and thank you for joining us via Zoom. We're extremely grateful for everyone's participation and delighted to have you with us today to share and discuss your thoughts and experiences regarding the opportunities for the mining sector in the Pacific Alliance countries. Before we start the discussion, a couple of housekeeping matters. The event is scheduled to be an hour and a half, and we would like this to be as interactive as possible. Some of you have previously sent us questions, but for those of you who have not, you may use the chat at any time to send us questions, and we'll try to answer all of them during the allotted time schedule at the end of the session. This session will be recorded, and this will be available in a few days. Today, we have here with us Marco Zavala from Chile. He is a partner at Guerrero Olivos and from the mining department in that firm. From Peru, we have Luis Miguel Elias. Luis Miguel is a partner at Reosa Alcázar y de las Casas and head of infrastructure projects and mining. From Mexico, we have Héctor Curi, who is partner at Galicia and forms part of the mining group. From Colombia, we have Diana Salazar, and she is a director at Jose Herrera Ruiz. And from Canada, we have Guillaume Legare in charge of South America at the Toronto Stock Exchange. Let's start off by welcoming Marco Zavala from Chile. Thank you very much, Marco.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for your kind introduction. Hello to everyone. Regards from Santiago, Chile, in a very warm and sunny day. We expect it to have 32 degrees. I hope all of you are well and safe in those difficult times indeed. Many thanks to everyone involved in the organization of this interesting webinar, and I hope it is going to be useful for all the audience. I've been asked to talk about Chile. I have 5 minutes, so I hope that it's going to be a good summary. Chile is perhaps one of the best jurisdictions in Latin America in terms of investment. It has been recognized as the most stable country in Latin America with solid institutions and strong rules of law. With a large, well-regulated and sophisticated capital market, with an investment grade from the main rating agencies like Moody's and Standard & Poor's. Chile is one of the few countries of the OECD with a network of free trade agreement, including deals with North America, Europe, China, Japan, and Australia. Also, Chile have a double taxation agreements with more than 40 countries and very open economy with a very low tariff. And also have a low level of corruption, very limited interference of the state in the economy, and strong anti-money laundering legislation in place. In terms of mining, also could say that Chile is a bona fide mining destination. #1 copper producer in the world by far, number 2 producer of lithium, and top 15 in gold producing, with several mines under development, which will increase its annual production sharply in the medium term. Also, Chile is the best ranked jurisdiction for the Fraser Institute for Mining Competitiveness. Lately, also, we can find a huge source of clean energy for mining industry, wind, solar, and now green hydrogen, which it could make the local main industry even greener. And finally, in terms of industry in Chile, we need to highlight that the majority of international mining companies are already operating in Chile, and some of them are using Santiago as a headquarters for the region. In terms of advantage or disadvantage or opportunities or challenge, I could say, for instance, in terms of advantages, Chile got a great infrastructure, good network of private ports, airports, roads, and power companies, especially renewables, well-educated and well-trained manpower, little involvement of the authorities in the industry, which limited the corruption, a mining culture in place, local technology, and many services companies operating already, and great geology and potential for new discoveries. Challenge are many as well. For instance, political reforms. We have a process for a new constitution, typical environmental issues and community problems. Now we need to see how the authority is going to handle the new wave of COVID-19. Also, we are suffering a shortage of water, but that is a process which is changing a bit that I will address later. There is a lack of exploration, and also the financial sector, which is very important, that is not involved enough in the industry. All those matters I will let you to address later during the webinar. Thank you very much, and I think I let Miguel to talk about Peru now.
Hello, everyone. Good morning for those of you that are in morning just like me, or good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. My name is Luis Miguel Elias. I'm a partner from Rivas Alcázar de las Casas. And just like Marco did, I would like to give you a brief overview of what is the forecast for 2021 in Peru in the mining industry. And also, I think this would be a good opportunity to discuss with other countries on what are the lessons learned from 2020, specifically for such a chaotic year. First of all, as we know, we faced an unprecedented challenge with the COVID-19, and the mining industry has not been far from receiving the toxic effects of that pandemic. In Peru specifically, early last year in 2020, on March, we had strict restrictions for which ended up closing the economy. Specifically in the mining industry, there were restrictions just to operate on maintenance level on critical operations, which was something that was not common for other mining industries in the region. However, those initial restrictions were now flexibilized and back in ongoing business as we are now. The first point that needs to be answered is how an economic rebound could be targeted for Peru. And being Peru a mining country, necessarily the mining industry should drive that rebound. And just to give you general ballpark figures, and using the reference that Marco gave in his mention to Chile, in the case of Peru, Peru has been consistently in the top 3 spots in the world ranking production of metals, specifically from silver, copper, and zinc, and in the top 10 ranking in gold, lead, and molybdenum, among others. So this shows a very diversified resource or mineral production in Peru, which of course and also has a great potential for exploration as well. Also, from an investor point of view, in the last decade, Peru has been one of the best performing economies, with GDP growth ranging from over 2% to 5% in some cases. However, this momentum in the last few years has slowed down. And that in part in the mining industry, for example, may be reflected on specifically untangled community disputes or claims in certain projects, which was supposedly something that would be aided or facilitated by the now leaving government. We have a new elections set up for April, and a new government, presidential elections and Congress elections is scheduled that will then have a new government in place by mid-year. So given the fact and given those two main factors that we are starting the second year of a global pandemic, all countries are needing investments to have a rebound and expedite working spots and expedite growth. It will be something very understandable that any government would put its conscience in Peru on the mining industry and facilitate that rebound. So I guess the good sign is that in the political campaign nowadays, we see no, or at least it's not driven on anti-mining protests. It's very easy to be anti something in order to gain political claim. In this case, this time around, we're seeing that there is consciousness that the mining industry is relevant and that it's required as its key industry in Peru for a rebound to be targeted late this year. Those are the main challenges that we expect. Pre-pandemic, we had, as I said, the social challenges for mega projects and how to untangle them. And now in a pandemic world and a post-pandemic world, hopefully sometime soon, the challenge will also be those social community issues, but as the necessity of the company generating of the country generating new workplaces, generating economic growth. So those two factors would end up somehow helping to untangle some of those community projects. So that's the positive way to see the forecast for the 2021. That it would be something very obvious, hopefully, for any government to point at the mining industry as a joint helper, or joint partner to have the country back on its feet and in the economic growth that it has in the past. So specifically looking at 2021, I think we can see it in two phases for Peru. The first phase would be very much similar to what we have seen in the second semester of 2020, which is big and mid-scale mining companies with productive assets seeking ways to become more efficient, investing in technology, investing in their own projects, or even enhancing their refinancings. I think that trend is going to maintain in the initial months of this year. And in the case of exploration companies, junior miners, or companies that are in development of their mining projects, the first months of this year would be some sort of a conservative phase in light of what would be the results of the elections and in light of what would be the continuous performance basically in the world in regards of the pandemic. However, that second phase, or that second bucket of potential would definitely be accompanied by preparation and logistics for those stakeholders in the mining industry that have projects to develop. And Peru has a interesting portfolio for new projects in different stages. As opposed to other years, there are no 3 flagship big projects, but we do have, in terms of new projects, a very diversified portfolio, which also may help in lower the reflectors of political approach or instance to those projects and make them more efficient in terms of moving forward and getting them done shortly. So I guess just to wrap up on Peru, I think it would be very, very useful to continue discussing in this space with everyone on what are the lessons learned and what are the main advantages that have seen in other jurisdictions that we can also learn from and implement in our own experiences. So I'll let Sara introduce our next panelist.
Thank you, Luis Miguel. If I can pass it over to Diana, please, from Colombia.
Sure, thank you, Sarah. Thanks everyone for joining us. The main positive highlights in Colombia, I think, would be first that we have a fairly straightforward mining regulation. For example, concession contracts in Colombia include all phases of the mining project. Therefore, it is not necessary to request first an exploration license and then an exploitation license, but rather the concession contract covers the whole project from the beginning until closure. The exploration phase can last up to 11 years and no environmental license is required. And the concession area may hover between 1.24 hectares up to 10,000 hectares. So it's quite flexible. And the term of the concession is of 30 years and may be extended subject to negotiation with the mining authority. Regarding mining applications, the treatment given to foreign investors is almost the same, or basically the same as to local investors. Actually, foreign investors can lodge applications without having a local entity in Colombia. That local entity would only be required if the application is approved and the concession will be executed. Regarding new trends, what we've seen lately is first, a couple of stream agreements, which were not usual in Colombia. The first one was executed between Continental Gold and Triple Flag for the development of the Buriticá Gold project, which is currently operating. And the latest one was between Caldas Gold and Wheaton Precious Metals for Caldas Gold Marmato project for its expansion. That has been very interesting, is new in Colombia, and I think it opens a new gate for financing projects. The other interesting trend is that the mining authority is currently developing the terms of reference for public bids for granting special mining concessions in certain strategic areas for specific minerals, which include gold, platinum, coltan, copper, iron, magnesium, and I think also coal. And those will be subject to special conditions. We're waiting to see if in the next months we will see finally the terms of reference, but it will be a special concession, which is basically different from the ordinary concessions with special provisions regarding surface fees and some incentives. Regarding challenges, I think we have similar challenges to other countries, which are basically related to environmental protection and the protection of communities and their interests. The Constitutional Court in Colombia is quite active regarding the protection of these interests. And in some events, it has established like additional or more stringent environmental requirements than those that establish the local laws and regulations. Couple of examples are the prohibitions to execute mining activities in moorlands, and also establishing higher quality standards of air in certain regions. The other challenge are ethnic communities, because if a mining project in any way can directly affect them, prior consultation has to be undertaken at any stage. And finally, the other biggest challenge is the local opposition in certain regions by local governments and communities, which we hope that will decrease due to the recent reform to the royalties system, which will allocate more resources to those communities in which mining activities are undertaken, and also will be used for environmental protection causes. And finally, I think another opportunity that I forgot to mention is that it's a highly unexplored country versus its potential geology. I think that's all. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Thank you, Diana. If I could pass it over now to Hector Curi from Mexico.
Thank you, Sarah. Again, thank you all. Thank you, Marco and the team at Guerrero Olivos for organizing this webinar. My name is Hector Curi. I'm a partner at Galicia Abogados. Galicia is a transactional firm in Mexico with a strong regulatory offering and supported by strategic litigation as well. We are about 30 partners and 180 associates. So we're a full service firm, and we are one of the few in Mexico full service firms that offer a mining practice. So we bring all the muscle of the transactional and regulatory aspect and litigation to our clients in the mining industry. So Mexico is the fourth largest recipient of foreign direct investment in the mining sector in the world. So it's a very big destination for mining activities. As Diana was saying, it's also very unexplored. So it is estimated that we have a number of states in Mexico that are underdeveloped in mining. Mexico is one of the top 10 producers of silver. Silver is the number one, of gold, in which it is the 9th largest producer in the world, and copper, in which is the 8th largest producer. Mexico, as I was saying, only 8 states out of 32 concentrate more than 65% of the production. So it is largely unexplored, and it has a lot of potential. In Mexico, the rights to the minerals are held by the Mexican state, and it grants concessions for the exploration and exploitation, as I imagine is the case in most Latin American countries. These concessions are granted for 50 years, and they have a renewal for another 50 years as well. The Mexican authorities, in that sense, are the grantor of the concessions and also the regulators of those concessions, and concessionaires, have to comply with their obligations under the concession, and also, as in the case of other concessions, have to pay a royalty duties. In the case of Mexico, I believe there are around 7.5% of the concessionaire's income. So I think it's one of the lowest concession duties in the region. The mining concessions grant the right over the minerals, but not over the land. So one of the challenges that are faced by entities operating in Mexico is to secure the land in which the concession is granted. So that has been done through, obviously, the acquisition of property, but also surface rights contracts, and those have become the normal practice in Mexico. In terms of financing, all the major banks are active. Most of all the major banks are active in granting financing for mining operations, and it's a very, I would say, flexible practice in the way that the financings are structured. We also have, for small projects, governmentally owned banking institutions granting financings to the sector. I think with that, I can conclude, and I would open it to questions and answers at the end of the session. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you very much. And finally, if we could go over to Guillaume Legare from the TSX, please.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you, Marco and the Guerreros Olivos team for the invitation, and also for coordinating this important discussion today. It's a pleasure to be part of this dialogue. Obviously, the TMX Group. My name is Guillaume Legare. I joined the TMX Group about 2 years ago. I've been in Latin America for over 10 years. And the TMX Group took the decision in 2019 to have a full-time presence in the region. So it's very important for us to be able to follow the mining activity in the region, which is a top sector, and I will explain why. As you probably know, also Canada could be the first G7 country to become a member of the Pacific Alliance. So with a combined population of 225 million, a combined GDP of over 2.5 trillion Canadian, it is really a strategic market for Canada. And the platform is not only for commercial integration, but also it would also be an opportunity to develop common objectives and best practices in a number of areas, including obviously mining and climate change. Latin America is the most important mining market for the TMX group. It currently represents 25% of all mining issuers on the TSX and TSXV. So there are 410. I'll give you a few numbers here, but I'll be happy to share presentations after the meeting. But just to give you some important numbers. So there are over 410 mining companies in Latin America that are listed on TSX and TSXV with 1,061 mining properties. Of those 410 companies, 257 are in the Pacific Alliance countries. So we have 132 in Mexico with 307 properties. We have 62 in Peru with 137 mining properties. We have 34 in Chile with 100 mining properties and 29 in Colombia with 57 mining properties. So this was to give you a snapshot of the footprint of the TSX, TSXV and the Pacific Alliance countries. So Canada is also the right partner for Pacific Alliance countries to, looking to do business, raise capital in North America. And Canada has the right environment to foster growth with the strength of its financial system, the economic stability and pro-business environment. So these are critical conditions on which TSX has built and developed a strong equity capital markets over the last 160 years. So we have at TSX, TSXV, a meaningful platform to supply growth capital for the Pacific Alliance countries in strategic sectors like mining, but we're also looking to the energy sector, renewable energy, innovation. There are many areas where we can help company growth also on our market. And there are full benefits offered by our two-tiered ecosystem, two-tier market ecosystem. Canada's equity market is a growth platform for LATAM businesses, and it provides world-class access to capital and liquidity. And just to give you some numbers also here, today there are 3,289 issuers on our markets. 1,649 on TSX Venture, 1,640 on TSX, and the total market cap of those companies is over 3.5 trillion Canadian dollars. 2020 was also an exceptional year for TSX and the TSX Venture, with a record number of TSX IPOs and the best year for IPO capital raised on TSX in the last 10 years. So we had over 300 new listings, 171 on the TSX, 129 on the TSX Venture, 42.8 billion in equity capital raised also on our markets. And just to also better position our mining sector, so we are number one in the number of listed mining companies globally with 1,146 in total on TSX and TSX Venture. We're also number one in the value of mining equity capital raised from 2016 to 2020. Raising 37% of the total mining equity capital in the world with a value of 120 billion. And also we are a global exchange. We have 43% of global mining companies listed on TSX, TSXV. We have 47% of the more than 5,000 mineral projects held by TSX, TSXV companies that are outside of Canada. So this is just the figures, but for 2020 on the TSX and TSX Venture, we were number one in the number of mining listings, 57 new listings, 48 on the Venture, 48 on the TSX Venture and 9 on the TSX, and there were 10 new listings in Latin America. There was 7.5 billion capital raised on the overall for the mining sector, and 2.9 billion was raised for projects in LATAM. So this was a significant figure as well. In terms of number of financings as well, this year, 2020, was a 30% increase over 2019 with a total of 1,642 mining financing. So these are good news, but I just wanted to take a few minutes also to give you some key considerations for mining companies that want to go public on our markets. So there are opportunities and challenges, as the previous panelists explained, in each market. We want to play an active role in helping to develop the mineral wealth of the region. And the countries obviously will be competing for capital. Investors will be looking at investment opportunities, but also political stability, pro-business environment. And in the past few months, we have seen really how mining jurisdictions adopted the measures to mitigate the COVID crisis, how the mining sectors were tackling some of the challenges around environmental permitting processes and social license to operate. So we all have the same language and same priorities. What we have different at the TMX Group is really how investors and issuers rely on us to maintain the integrity of our markets. Our strength of this market is really helping to impact the long-term, medium to long-term growth of the LATAM mining businesses and raise capital, obviously, in the mining sector. One critical point of our market is the National Instrument 43-101 reporting. This is a Canadian mineral resource classification. It allows companies to get the best possible valuation for their businesses. So we allow investors to compare one mining company to others through this instrument. And this allows companies to get the best possible valuation for their assets. It could be in the ground or in production. So the differentiator with the 42-101 reporting is that it allows companies to market property based on inferred resources. This is somewhat unique to our market, and it helps drive valuation in mining. So you can get, if you can get the best valuation, that makes our market a natural place to raise capital. And we consider ourselves also, and this is very important for the junior markets in Latin America, we consider ourselves to be an entrepreneurial exchange. I mentioned our two-tier ecosystem. So there's different ways where you can go public, but we have a unique structure with the TSX Venture where we have a capital pool company, and we can adapt the different listing opportunities to the company's needs, capital needs as it grows. It's important to mention that the TSX and TSX Venture are linked to each other. So a company can start on the Venture Exchange and then graduate to the TSX. We have over 700 companies that have graduated from the Venture to TSX. And obviously today, the largest mining companies in the world, some of them have started on the Venture Exchange. And today there's around 52% of the mining companies listed on the TSX that graduated from the TSX Venture. And one other aspect that we need to identify, because our intention in Latin America is to identify the good management teams, the good projects, and help these management teams bring their projects to investors and to our markets. So management team is a critical element to consider for a company to go public. There is constraints on capital, but I think investors will be looking at the best possible management team that develops projects efficiently. There's many other factors to consider, as you mentioned also, Marco, at the beginning, including the size, the mineral, the infrastructure, connectivity. But I think the investors are really likely to back projects that have credible management teams with a successful track record. So with our regional presence here in Latin America, we are really want to position our markets for these new initiatives, and we can play obviously a more proactive role in strengthening the growth of the region. So this was my short introduction. We'll be talking about additional questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Guillaume, and thank you for to all of our panelists. We're going to switch to a few questions now. So I think I'll start off with one question for each of our panelists, and if we have time, we'll come back and with some further questions. So Marco, if we could start off with you, please. Our first question for you is in the past, many operating mines have suffered a lack of water availability. Have you seen any improvements in this area? Marco, you're on mute.
Sorry. No, so thank you for the question, Sarah. It's a good question, and it's one of the challenge that we need to overcome in Chile. Together with water, also we used to have a big problems with energy, right? In one point, the energy was really expensive for the mining industry. But the past governments changed the legislation in order to incentivize the investment in renewable energy and that worked very well at the end. And now, as I mentioned earlier on in my introduction, there is a great source of green energy in the north of Chile, and that make a great benefit for the mining industry, right? So that shows you how sometimes government and industry can work together in order to get some solutions. In terms of water, unfortunately, in Chile, the big mines are in the north, which is desert. So it has been this constant clashes between the communities and the mining industry regarding water rights, the use of the water, and all that. So the mining industry have decided that there need to be a change of paradigm in terms of that they can't carry on like this, and they decided, that they need to look for solutions. And I could say the first, the pioneer in this was BHP with Escondida. Escondida has a diesel plant for years, and that was the first plant in Chile doing that. And then Antofagasta also started using salty water from the sea for some of the operations in the north of Chile too. And then Codelco and again Antofagasta in Pelambres. So basically the industry decided that that is the solution. Every large project will have a diesel plant, and that is happening, right? So the problem is being handled properly with industry, and without any intervention of the government in this case. And also there are some standalone water plants, the salt plants, which are being projected for replace some and supply some communities, so no related to mining industry. So I see in Chile as a trend that the construction and the utilization of diesel plants is something that arrive and is going to be seen for a while. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Marco. If I can go to Luis Miguel now. The mining industry is prone to innovative sources of financing. Is this the case for Peru, and what alternative sources of financing has the Peruvian mining industry experienced in recent years?
Thanks, Sarah. Yes, this is the case for Peru, precisely. Peru has seen its fair share of metal streaming transactions in the last 10 years, basically, and we've seen specifically the Canadian royalty and streaming companies, the renowned international streaming companies, all of them active in the Peruvian market. So streaming has been some of a trend in Peru for allowing finance to companies in the mining industry. I think we can, in terms of innovative sources of financing, we can discuss on the trends also that have been common in last year. Last year, 2020. So the need for cost overruns generated by implementation of new protocols, investment on new technology, and that has seen the mid to big miners investing and enhancing their refinancings. Generally, those that have already a streaming in place will also have a bank syndicate or similar financing in place as well, which entails you to have a good intercreditor terms and complex transactions to be negotiated. So Peru has seen its fair share of those complex and innovative transactions. And I think we can also think that this trend is going to continue in 2021, of course, and possibly even in the case of companies that do have mining productive assets, we will see more offtake financing. We will see more biddings for production made by big companies to get better terms for the sale of their production and have funds to develop or expand their facilities and develop their projects. So those trends are going to continue. The advantage that Peru has is that Peru is a fully dollarized country. There's basically lack of exchange controls, and that's a very interesting advantage because finances can be fully in dollars, and no inefficient change of dollars to Peruvian currency will be a burden for financiers or for mining companies acting as borrowers. So that's an interesting also advantage that the country has of being fully dollarized. And I think the construction phases of new projects will continue also looking towards opportunities in the capital markets, whether in debt offerings or listing of equity offerings, as they have done in the past. So we are going to continue to see companies being listed, whether in Canada or being listed in the Lima Stock Exchange or otherwise, to raise capital. We're going to continue seeing them engaging in streaming transactions for have liquidity to develop their projects, and as well in conjunction having bank syndicates or more traditional financing to develop those projects.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Diana. Which new legal developments may be expected in the near future?
Thank you, Sarah. Probably the one that I was referring to before, which would be the public bids, which are very similar to the bids that the National Hydrocarbons Agency has been carrying out in Colombia for a while. It's really interesting because I think it's a good way of further developing the mining projects in Colombia. Apart from ordinary mining concessions, it requires companies which are larger, with more experience, with international standards. And there will be like an initial technical assessment phase of 2 years, which is not typical in concessions. And there will be a data room. There's like some features that we've never seen before in mining companies. And I think it's the way to go further with the mining industry and to make it really professional and to be a big player in the international markets. The other thing that it's been going around for a while is a project to implement the environmental license for the exploration phase. We don't think that's going to happen, and it shouldn't happen, because actually one of the big incentives is to be able to carry out exploration for 11 years without having an environmental license, which takes a while to be obtained. And it's been going around for at least 2 or 3 years, but I don't think it would happen. Those are the two main things.
Thank you, Diana.
Thank you.
Hector, can I ask you, could you please describe for us a typical security package for an investment in a mining project in Mexico?
Of course. Thank you, Sarah, for the question. Yes, like in any other financing, the creditor looks to secure to have a security over all of the assets of the debtor. So in this case, in mining, it's not the exception. So you normally see a pledge over the shares, even of the mining company, and mortgage over any pieces of land that it owns. Something particular about mining is that the debtor normally grants a blanket lien pledge, so a pledge without dispossession over all of its assets, and that pledge includes the mining concessions. So the pledger, the creditor has a pledge over the mining concessions, and for that pledge to be effective, it must be registered in the mining public registry in Mexico. A particular aspect of this pledge is that even if the pledgee is not an authorized person, it may be granted with the concession, and it has an obligation to dispose of that concession within a year. So that's mainly the differences between a normal project financing or any type of bank financing or any type of financing and the mining is the registry in the public registry of mining in Mexico.
Thank you. If I can ask now for Guillaume, what is the main objective for the TMX Group in establishing a local presence in Latin America?
Thank you, Sarah. Yes, as I mentioned in my introduction, the TMX Group made the decision in 2019 to have a full-time presence in Lima to cover the region. I mentioned also that, you know, the Latin American market is the most important mining market for TSX and TSXV with, you know, 410 mining companies, 1,061 properties. But what we found also is that a lot of international companies have a presence in those countries with the 1,061 mining properties. But we also found out that there was not enough local management teams accessing our TSXV and TSX markets. So I would say that this is really the opportunity around the mining sector, which is the pillar, one of the pillars of our exchange, one of the strongest sectors of the TSX and TSXV. But we want to bring this also mining leadership also and to other sectors around clean energy, renewable energy, innovation, as I mentioned. So I think some of the momentum is certainly good in Latin America to consider for the junior companies, exploration companies to access capital. I mentioned briefly about the Capital Pool Company program, the CPC program. So there are CPC founders at the moment that are looking at mining assets in Latin America. So what we can do is help exploration companies access those CPCs, do the introductions, the proper introductions to the CPC founders, to the banks, to the whole ecosystem. And I think this is certainly where we can put more efforts. We want to be much closer to the opportunities and also bring the investors and the bankers and the whole Canadian mining ecosystem closer to the opportunities. And we have done, for example, the first virtual mining investor day last October. We didn't have any other opportunity to go virtual, but we found this quite productive. And this is something we could do also maybe twice a year in 2021 to organize an event where we could present public and private mining companies to investors and stakeholders. So this is the kind of leadership we want to bring to the region. And obviously there's lots of opportunities. As you all mentioned, some countries like Mexico and Colombia are underexplored on the mining front. And we are the first exchange to establish a local presence in the region. And this is one of the things we can do to help better leverage the mineral wealth of the region.
Thank you very much. I have a question here that I would like each of our panelists to answer. We have a question here from Fred Marquez. He would like each panelist to give an idea about how mineral exploration and mining companies are funding their projects in your respective country, appetite for listing on the TSX, and what type of capital is available in your country, private equity, capital markets, family offices, etc. And if you're seeing an increase in investments in exploration or if investments continue to flow to developing production projects. If we could start with Marco on this question, please. And Marco, you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Fred, for the question. Really interesting question. Here we find a mixture between challenge and opportunities, right? In the case of Chile, I could say there is the challenge, the lack of exploration on one side, and then the lack of involvement of the banking or the financial system within the exploration industry. So there is not, or is really limited, the exposure of the financial system in that sector. So basically, if exploration is funded by foreign companies or Chileans which are starting as little entrepreneurs. In my experience, we started seeing a lot of activity in exploration in the last 2 or 3 years. Before that, it was very, very hard to find some explorers interested to come to Chile. And I think it was a worldwide experience. In general, they are Canadians. They are already listed companies. taking positions in Chile, for instance, like Sarah, for instance, like HPX, which is not I think it's not listed, the HPX. And then lately, I've seen a new trend, which is locals with very keen, to get into the mining market in exploration. They are shopping for gold project or copper project with some exploration, and the goal of those companies is basically to spend some extra funds in more exploration to get a York or a 43101, and then go to either Toronto or Australia. We have been talking to London, but apparently the London market, they're looking for something, some asset more developed than what they are at the moment in Chile. So maybe that is a second stage. And also, I mean, there's some family office that are getting involved, but very shy at the moment. But because the interest rates are so low, everybody is looking at alternatives, and mining is getting pretty hot locally. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marco. If we could go over to Luis Miguel, please.
Sure, thank you. In the case of Peru, I see some similarities to what Marco just summarized, and I'll start there's a traditional banking or traditional local banking basically has been very conservative in their approach for exploration mining companies, and the availability of financing or capital for those types of companies, considering the risks that they entail, are something that not traditionally are open to the local traditional financial market. So that opens space for, as in the case of Chile, for international players and for a diversified role of international players in raising capital. And we see this very heavily diversified. We've seen private equity funds, investment funds, investing in capital or debt in companies developing exploration projects or construction of mining projects as well. In the case of family offices, that trend, I think has not been as potent or as important in compared to what has happened with private equity funds and investment firms from abroad. I guess family offices that traditionally were related to mining companies will still be looking at the industry, but other family offices investing in other sectors not necessarily have switched or started to look into mining in the case of Peru. But I think the importance that the potential of exploration in Peru has, or the potential mining in that Peru has, will still open up space for royalty companies, streaming companies, to keep looking at Peru as a source of, or a target for investment and providing capital.
Thank you very much. Let's go over to Colombia and Diana now, please.
Thank you, Sarah. It's very similar to what Luis Miguel was mentioning. There is no available resources in Colombia from traditional banks for exploration projects. It will be very limited. Traditionally, this is private equity, international companies. Some years ago, we had some interest from junior exploration companies listed in TSX. But I think that's it. So the alternative financing systems have been the royalty agreements and now the stream agreements.
Thank you. Hector, can you let us know for Mexico, please?
Sure. And I don't want to sound repetitive, but it's basically the same. Streaming agreements are a big trend in Mexico as well as in what Luis Miguel was describing and Diana. And we also have, non-banks financing this type of investment companies financing this type budget. So yeah, in exploration phase, it's always a challenge. In Mexico, also traditional banks do not participate. In terms of the public companies, all major players in Mexico are almost all the major players are listed in the public markets and normally issue debt as well.
Thank you very much. Guilherme, I have a specific question for you here from Francisco Acuna. How has been the experience of the dual listing agreement with the Santiago Stock Exchange, and would something similar be replicated in other countries in the region?
Yeah, this is a good question. You know, the agreement was signed with the Santiago Exchange for the venture exchange a few years ago. We haven't seen a lot of traction, but I think it was also linked to the market momentum. I think our intention with those agreements is really to give access to additional pools of capital to our clients and find the best markets where we can find those pools of capital. And I think what we see right now is really a new trend towards the exploration, new capital for exploration companies, and the current agreement that we have, and also the MILA agreement that we have with the MILA countries is something that we should be focusing on in the next couple of years. We have ongoing discussions with the local exchanges in the region, in Colombia, in Peru, in Mexico, and in Chile, obviously, and even in Brazil. We have seen in Brazil, for example, a company called Aura Minerals that issued a BDR on the B3 this year and raised some capital on the B3. This is an interesting sign that we are seeing some new pools of capital in Latin America. But let's try to build on the agreement that we have for the MILA exchanges. And I'm sure with the activity we see around the venture, around exploration, we will see more activity on this front.
Thank you, Guilherme. I have another question here, and perhaps for each of our countries, if you could answer. This is from Antonio Bolse at Shore Capital. Are any of you seeing an increase or presence of Chinese investors for mining projects? If we could start with Marco, please.
That's a good question. I've been here back in Chile for 12 years, and I could say the first 8 people were talking about Chinese. The Chinese were coming, and nothing happened until I could say 3-4 years that they're starting slowly coming to Chile. They started buying wineries and then some agriculture companies. And then suddenly it was a bit of madness. The Chinese, they started buying almost everything. Power companies, they got a big stake in SQM, very active indeed, and they became the biggest investor in Chile for the last 2 years. In mining, we haven't seen much activity so far. I think in Peru is different. Obviously, Luis Miguel will give us more information. There was an agreement with Codelco and Minmetals to offtake agreement, and since then, no much is going on. We were expecting, to have more activity. I think perhaps the reason why they are not so active is because there haven't been much M&A activity for operating mines. Or have been very hard to get into them because they're very competitive, but certainly there is space for exploration. I would hope that they can start, doing more exploration as well in Chile.
Thank you, Marco. Luis Miguel, can you let us know for Peru, please?
Of course, in the case of Peru, this has been massive, and I think it will continue that way. We've seen the Chinese investments deploy for all the services and critical provisions of services for mining industry. For example, the 2 biggest banks from China, ICBC, Bank of China, already operate in Peru. The Chinese have invested in one of the largest energy distribution companies and energy companies in Peru as well. And they are participating directly and hold majority positions in productive assets in copper, silver, gold projects as well. So and basically their sources of financing are also other Chinese financial entities that are already in the market. So we've seen this trend in all. The Chinese presence is in all of the critical aspects that are required for provision of services in the mining industry. They are doing the same investment or strategy for infrastructure as well. And I think this will continue. Peru is a very international investment-friendly country, as there are, as I said, it's fully dollarized, and investment terms for the Chinese, they have capitalized on these opportunities, and I think they will continue to do so.
Thank you. And Diana, for Colombia, please.
Thank you, Sarah. I think the most significant recent one would be the investment of Zijin and the purchase of Continental Gold. That's all I can think for the moment.
Great. Also, just as a comment as well, we have through our subsidiary Cordoba Minerals, we have Chinese investors as well for our copper project as well, and they're extremely interested. So I think they're definitely starting to gain a bit of a presence in Colombia. If we can go over to Hector, please, for Mexico.
Yeah, I would say that I haven't been aware of Chinese investment in mining in Mexico. In other sectors, they are very active, but not specifically that I can think about in mining. What we have had, and I know it's not the question, but we've had investment from Arab countries, from the United Arab Emirates. So that's interesting. That it's something unusual that didn't happen in the past, and that has been some of the sources of investment now in mining projects.
Perfect, thank you. I have another specific question here for Guillaume from Fred Marquez again. Guillaume, you mentioned that 2020 was a record year for IPOs on the TSX and TSXV. Is this also valid for companies based in LATAM? I mean, it's also was it also a record IPO year on the TSX and TSXV for companies based here, and if so, which countries? Sorry,
Yes.
which countries in LATAM?
Yeah, thank you, Fred, and I will obviously share with you the latest numbers. We just got the 2020 year-end mining numbers. So just to recap on the total new listings. So I mentioned 57 new listings in total, and 10 of those new listings were in LATAM. I mentioned also 7.5 billion in equity capital raise for 2020, of which 2.1 was in Latin America. And in terms of number of financings, a 30% increase over 2019, 1,642 financings. So this is for the overall picture. If we look at regional results, we can look at Mexico, for example. There was 10 new mining listings with projects in Latin America. In Mexico, we had 2 new mining listings and with projects in Mexico, 1.9 billion in equity capital raise for Mexico. And I mentioned already 370 Mexican mining projects. If we look at Colombia, we have a number of financings that were on the rise, 191 million in equity capital raise in 2020 with projects in Colombia, and 6 number of 10 million plus financings in 2020 by companies with projects in Colombia. So it's not so much in terms of the number of IPOs in LATAM as opposed to the financing activity that was on the rise. If we look at and I can share all the names and the figures. If we look at Chile, 87 million in equity capital raise in 2020 by companies with mining projects in Chile. And the important fact for Chile, which is a long-term stable market, there's an average of 7 analysts covering the TSX, TSXV companies with projects in Chile. And just to see if I have other figures here for Peru, 329 million equity capital raise in 2020 with companies with mining projects in Peru. So we will see how things will evolve in 2021, but the clear signal, obviously we're looking at new IPOs for Latin American management teams and growing the number of financings, but I believe that the venture exchange will play an active role in 2021 in the region.
Thank you very much. I have another question here from Francisco Acuna for each of our panelists. I think it's a very relevant question because we personally at HBX and other companies have definitely experienced this. So access to projects in prospective ground is normally an issue, particularly when you have to deal with local players who tend to have crazy expectations. This seems to be a trend in the region. What do you think is the average time that it takes to make a deal, and how can this be improved in your opinion? Marco, let's start with you, please.
Hard question. I know very well that, Sarah.
Definitely.
Yes. I would say that that's one of the challenges here in Chile for exploration, right? And a few deals have collapsed for the same reason that the owners got maybe not so crazy, but high expectations, regardless social crisis, regardless COVID-19, regardless the Pesco Copa, and it's very hard to manage those expectations, especially people who are not very professional. I mean, some of them are owners, are small miners, not very sophisticated, that they think they got the second Escondida or the second Pelambres, and they got that fixed in their mind, and it's very hard, to overcome that, and it's an experience that we know very well, and it's hard to deal with. Yeah, unfortunately.
Thank you, Marco. Luis Miguel.
Yeah, thank you. In the case of Peru, this is also a challenge. I think the best way to solve greedy expectations, so to speak, would be to have a very open commercial discussion up front and very transparent discussion from start to understand if those expectations can reach a middle point or a balance point. If those discussions or commercial discussions start with those expectations not subject to a reality, basically that would be a toxic issue that would need to be dealt later on when the transaction evolves and maybe a deal breaker at the end, or maybe a halt. So I guess the best way to address those issues is from start to see what are the real expectations and have those expectations settled. I think that point in particular has somehow evolved in Peru in a good way. We've seen expectations, at least from a comparative side from other projects, having a mining diversified country, look towards what's happening in other regions of Peru or in that project next door, and that may help for those expectations to be lowered or at least addressed in a more efficient way.
Thank you. Diana, in Colombia?
Okay, so in Colombia, there's an advantage, and is that mining easements are established by virtue of law, and there's an actual procedure to fix the compensation, which is now the same as for the hydrocarbons industry. So in case an agreement is not reached, it's ideal to reach an agreement. It's very common to have like rent agreements. Buying the land is not easy because some of those lands don't have like a clear title chain. So it's easier to rent them, but otherwise you would have to resort to the easement procedure and to the compensation fixed by a judge.
Okay, thank you. To Hector, por favor. Sorry, I was trying to use Spanish. To Hector.
Sure. Yeah, in Mexico, it's similar to what Diana was describing. We have, obviously, you do want to reach an agreement. But there is a legal proceeding to have even expropriation, but also the forced execution of a temporary occupation agreement. These surface rights, as Diana was describing, the easements, In Mexico, they're called surface rights. Yeah, but yes, there is a you can initiate that proceeding. It's not ideal. The ideal is to reach an agreement, but if not, you do have that recourse.
Thank you. And I just have, we've got still a little bit of time, so I'm going to go back to Marco, and I have a question for, another question for each of our panelists. So Marco, there have been a couple of high-profile cases like Pascua Lama, where the companies have faced environmental and community problems. How is the situation currently?
Yeah, that's correct. There has been in the past, I mean, years ago, there were, high-profile companies with problems, but I think the industry as a whole have learned some lessons, and they have improved greatly the way how they're handling the new projects, how they are engaging the stakeholders, and why it's important to start, those relationships from day 1 or minus 20, I don't know. Because it's clear now that if the community doesn't like the project, it's not going to be a project. That's very clear now in Chile. So that is a lesson that has been learned quite well. And I saw how, for instance, Goldcorp, now Newmont, dealt with Nueva Unión. They brought the highest standard international into this project. They brought Canadian consultants to deal with the communities, and the result was really good. So they work very well regarding the environmental license and the communities. And bear in mind, they have problems before with El Morro. So I think in Chile that is a issue that obviously could be some problems in the future, but it has been dealt quite well by the industry.
Thank you, Marco. Luis Miguel, if you could answer first, please. How active and what role has the Peruvian government played to help untangle certain large-scale mining projects that are subject to social or community issues?
Well, that's also the main challenge pre-pandemic. We've had a large-scale flagship projects such as Conga, Tia Maria, Las Bambas, with very heavy politicized as well, social conflicts that will not help untangle those big projects. So the bet or the opportunity that the outgoing government had was to be a very technical, pro-business government to help have those bridges being built and have those and to untangle those issues. That was the promise, but however, the government had political problems within, which never got to the point of doing those flexibilities. So the government itself was not active in solving them and was not able to do so in the last 5 years. However, and the existing transitional government basically it is not focused on doing that. It will be focused also on having the transition towards having an orderly election for this year, and to transfer the power to the next government. That would be a very important challenge to address for the next government, and the next government definitely will need to look at that and will need to understand that if they have a plan towards having communication and building and closing those gaps, it will be efficient for the community and the country to generate further growth. So I guess how active has they been? They have not been active, and possibly that's the concern in the last 5 years, because those entanglements have not been solved and left those projects dealing with those issues. So, and it's been basically a concern of the private sector. I think what we're going to look forward to seeing in the second semester of this year is once a new government comes into place to look and focus on those issues, that will be definitely a trigger to have the economy of Peru rebound.
Thank you, Luis Miguel. Actually, we just have time for one more question. So I'm going to pass this one over to Guillaume. What opportunities do you see for Latin mining companies around clean energy transition?
Thank you, Sarah. It's a good question. In fact, I think it's all about how how Latin America will endorse the new low carbon future, and clean energy transition will be mineral intensive. There will be billions of tons of minerals and metals that will be needed to develop cleaner energy technologies, deploy wind, solar, geothermal power, energy storage. So this is an opportunity for LATAM to play a key role in this low carbon future. The mineral potential of LATAM, everyone knows about this. The region is rich in precious metals, base metals, largest reserves of critical metals that are necessary for the clean energy revolution. So the opportunity here is really to see more local management teams here again that will be positioning their companies and also move up the value chain. We need to see sustainable extraction and processing of minerals and metals to secure the supply chain, the clean energy technologies, minimize the ESG, like environmental, social, and governance impact, the climate footprint on the value chain. So we all know that there will be sustainable finance emerging as the new standard for mining companies to maintain access to capital. Institutional investors are looking at ESG criteria into their analysis and decision-making process. We need to see the proper level of ESG disclosure also around the availability of sustainability reports. So this will be what companies will have to focus on. And also, I think on our side, in order to help issuers access highest ESG standards, we have developed our own ESG website, ESG resource at TMX. It's called ESG 101. So we're helping companies navigate the complexity of ESG reporting and learn about the best practices to meet the shareholder ESG standards. So I think this will be a great opportunity for LATAM, and I think the markets will have a role to play to support that growth. And currently, we see a lot of interest for clean energy mineral producers, base metals, battery metals on our markets. In order to have a complete response to this question, I did write a POV a few months ago, a POV for cleaner energy transition and the opportunity for LATAM mining companies into the low carbon future. So if you just Google it, you will have access to the POV with much more data. I don't want to repeat all the data here for the time that we have. But this is a very interesting topic for LATAM and the future of mining in LATAM.
Thank you very much. So I would just like to finish up by thanking again Guerrero Olivos and Marco for organizing this webinar. I think it's been extremely informative and a great conversation. Thank you again to all of our panelists. I think it's been also very informative for each country and provided great information on investing into each of these respective jurisdictions. Just a reminder to everybody that this has been recorded, so it will be available in the next couple of days. And thank you, of course, to our audience and for the questions. Thank you, everybody, and have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Everyone.
Thank you.